Um, Welcome once again to the third session of the Microsoft Defender XDR Zero to Hero webinar series. On the very first two sessions, we focused on the basics of Microsoft Defender XDR, where we spoke about, what is Microsoft Defender XDR and what are the core products inside it. Then on the second session, we spoke about the licensing about Microsoft Defender XDR. So today we thought that let's double click into each one of these products and start looking deeper into them. So today we'll be talking about how to get started with Microsoft Defender for Office 365. And as you can see, this is part one because we also want to do a part two on this product. So let's get started. A quick introduction about myself. So my name is Vignesh Ganeshan. I work as an enterprise architect. I'm also a Microsoft MVP for Microsoft 365 as well as security, and I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer. So been in the industry for almost close to 13 plus years now, dealing with core Microsoft 365 products as well as security. Let me hand it over to my co-speaker Samik to introduce himself. Samik, over to you.
Thank you, Vignesh, and myself, Samik, and I am another MVP in security area. And apart from that, I have been an MCT and been in the industry for around 11 years. And I'm also a cloud security architect. And last year, I got my first book on KQL published. And we both are going to help you understand the entire Defender stack in a lot more deeper way. So over to you, Vignesh.
Thanks, Samik. All right, so I just want to quickly show the slide where we talk about setting the expectations for this webinar series. If you're somebody who has already been a part of this webinar, or if you have seen the recording before, you pretty much understand the expectations, but I just want to reiterate on this. So the targeted audiences for this webinar series would be Microsoft 365 admins or architects. If at all you're coming from an Azure background, cloud engineers and architects and IT security professionals also. But we do, expect that you have a basic amount of understanding on Microsoft 365 and Azure services because this webinar series is not designed to teach you the core nitty-gritties of Microsoft 365 or Azure. So we'll be completely focusing only on the Defender side of things. So which is why we expect you to have a decent understanding of Microsoft 365 and Azure. So the end goal is to get yourself familiarized with all the Microsoft Defender XDR products, implementation methods, licensing, and also some industry best practices. Also, as final key takeaway, so once you're, if at all you have been, following our webinar series or being a part of all our sessions, right? So we expect you to have a good understanding of what is Microsoft Defender XDR, what are the different products inside it, and how you can go about configuring all these products, right? You also want to make sure that you understand why is it important to have an XDR in an organization which has a good amount of cloud footprints, and what is the problem this product is trying to solve. So those would be the key takeaways. So let's talk about how do we plan to run this entire webinar series. So as we already said in the beginning, the first two sessions were completely dedicated to the introductory stuff. So wherein we spoke about Defender and also the licensing. So from here onwards, we'll be double clicking into each one of these products, and we want to do a much more deep dive session showing you a lot of demos, doing the real technical stuff. So the goal is to have some 12 to 15 sessions in this webinar series, and we are planning to have at least 2 sessions per product. So these would be bi-weekly sessions, and we are planning to do this on Saturdays at 6 p.m. IST. Of course, all these sessions will be recorded and it will be made available on my YouTube channel so that you can view it later on demand. Each session we'll be planning to run it for 60 minutes, wherein the 50 minutes would be for the core session in itself, and we can spare the next 10 minutes for Q&A. And at the end, we'll be displaying a QR code wherein we want you to go through, scan it and give us your honest feedback. And if at all you also want to ask some questions specific to the session that you just attended or viewed, you can make use of that form and ask that question so that when we come back to the upcoming sessions, right, we can address those questions and make sure that your question gets answered. All right, so a quick recap on what we've been doing over the past 2 sessions. So we spoke about what is an XDR and why should you even care. We also we gave a high-level overview of all the Microsoft Defender XDR products. Could be Defender for Office 365, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity, Defender for Cloud Apps. And we also spoke about all the other products which are closely integrated with this also. We also did a complete demo on the Microsoft Defender XDR Admin Center. We spoke about how all these products are closely integrated with each other. Of course, these are standalone products which has a specific purpose or a specific problem to solve, but they all come together to build a strong security layer. So we spoke about that. And then we also did a comparison with other third-party products and how you can do some cost takeouts if at all you've been spinning up and running those third-party products. And the session just prior to this, we spoke about Microsoft Defender XDR licensing. We went into each one of the products and we spoke about how the licensing works for that. Yeah. And in terms of agenda for this very session, I'll begin by talking about an overview of Microsoft Defender for Office 365. Of course, this is something which we've been stressing upon for the last two sessions, but I'll try to dig deeper today and speak in detail about Microsoft Defender for Office 365. Then we'll also be talking about the future availability, the licensing SKUs and licensing terms, things that you need to be mindful of when you're playing around with Defender for Office 365, specifically in terms of license. And then the permissions, right? So this is always key because not everybody in an organization gets a global admin, right? So based upon your roles, you would be given the appropriate permissions. So if at all you're somebody who's been expected to take care of Microsoft Defender for Office 365 in your organization, then what are the permissions or roles that you need? We'll be talking about that. And then we'll also be talking about the Exchange Online protection and Defender for Office 365 protection stack. I'll be talking about why is a security laid out, like how you can go from EOP to MDO Plan 1 and then MDO Plan 2. Then I'll be handing it over to Samik, where he's going to show a complete demo on how you can configure the policies and the other capabilities. So that's what Samik is going to do. And then I'll be sharing some useful links. And then finally, we can do the Q&A and close. All right, so the Microsoft Defender XDR. So this is, I think this slide, we've shown this to you multiple times now. And the way you need to understand this product is when I say the Defender XDR, it's think of it as a single pane of glass, which brings together everything under one single umbrella. It could be your hybrid identities, your endpoints, email and collaboration, then SaaS apps, and also the other cloud workloads, right? So, and similar to any other XDR, it can help to prevent and protect threats and also to detect and respond and also to extend. The ones that you're seeing here, these are sort of it could be any XDR, but these are the core capabilities of any XDR. Specific to Microsoft XDR, it takes care of your identities, endpoints, emails, SaaS apps, and stuff. So in this very session, we'll be talking about email and collaboration because Defender for Office 365 is the product that's going to help to take care of the email and collaboration components in your tenant. All right, let's move on. All right, so when you look at this, right, so at a very high level, when I say Defender for Office 365, it's a cloud-based email filtering service that helps to protect your organization against advanced threats to email. It's just not about email and also the collaboration tools, right? When I say collaboration tools, it could be your SharePoint, your OneDrive, stuff that you put inside, the links that you share in Teams, and we'll be doing demos about, what are the different places which the Defender for Office 365 touches, right? And I want to begin this session by talking about this very architecture that you see here, right? So when I say Defender for Office 365, the core for this is always Exchange Online Protection, which is EOP. Now, EOP is a given. It is there in every single tenant that you see, right? You could be using the least SKU, or you could be using the highest SKU. You could also be using E5, but Exchange Online Protection is something which comes out of the box. You don't need to pay anything extra. As long as you're licensed for Exchange Online, you get Exchange Online Protection, right? And we'll be talking about what are the things that you can configure on Exchange Online Protection. And then on the next level, you have the MDO Plan 1, which is why you can see me calling this as a cumulative architecture, right? And then you have the MDO Plan 2. So EOP is the one which offers all the protection capabilities. Then at the next level, you get protect and detect if at all you're topping it up with MDO Plan 1. And then you have the MDO Plan 2, which gives you the EOP capabilities as well as the Plan 1 capabilities, as well as whatever P2 has to offer. So this is how you need to look at this architecture. So if your question is, well, if I'm going for Plan 1, what do I get? Of course, you get the EOP capabilities. plus the one which the plan one has to offer. And and I think you can make it from what I'm trying to say here. So this is how this architecture works. Now, in terms of future availability with plan one, these are the core capabilities that you would get: the safe attachments, safe links, advanced phishing thresholds, real-time detections. And with plan two, as I said, everything that you see here, and in addition to that, you get the attack simulation training and all these automate, investigate, and respond capabilities. Now, having said that, please bear in mind that with plan one, your EOP is also a part of it, right? With plan two, your EOP plus plan one is also a part of it. So that's how we need to look at it, because to stress upon on that once again, you could be using any license as long as you're having Exchange Online in your tenant configured and turned on, you have EOP. Yep. Now the SKUs, this is something which we spoke briefly in our previous session, right? So if at all you're wondering, so what are the SKUs that gives you my MDO plan one and plan two capability? Well, these are the SKUs, and it is always a per user subscription. Now in the very next slide, I'll be talking about what do I mean by a per user subscription. But these are the SKUs that currently covers the plan one and plan two capabilities. Now this is this is exactly how this has been mentioned on the Microsoft documentation. When I say licensing terms for plan one, right? So for Microsoft Defender for Office 365 plan one tenants, license must be acquired for users or mailboxes falling under one or more of the following scenarios. So this is how the licensing works, right? So any user that accesses a mailbox that benefits from Defender for Office 365. So if at all you're accessing a mailbox, which for that, right? A shared mailbox. So this could be a user mailbox or a shared mailbox that benefits from Defender for Office 365 protections, right? And if safe attachment protection for SharePoint, OneDrive for Business or Teams is turned on, all users that access SharePoint, OneDrive for Business or Teams. Finally, any user that uses Microsoft 365 apps or Teams where safe links are configured. Now, what I'm trying to say from here is, as long as you are a user in your tenant, right, and you have and whatever you're doing touches upon all this, right? You have a mailbox, and that mailbox is being secured and governed by MDO Plan 1, right? Or if the safe attachment capability is turned in your tenant, and maybe the files that you're sharing, or maybe you're sending an email and the attachment is getting scanned by MDO, then of course, yes, you should be making sure that you're licensed with MDO Plan 1, right? And any user that uses, so similar way, so as long as any of the work that you're doing gets governed or secured by MDO Plan 1 capabilities, then you need to make sure that you're licensed for it, or else you will fall under compliance for Microsoft and they're going to come after you, right? The same applies for your MDO Plan 2 also, right? So as long as whatever you're doing is secured or governed by an MDO Plan 2 capability, which is what is given here, all Exchange Online users on the tenant, this is because Plan 2 features and capabilities protect all users, all shared mailboxes, and it's pretty much whatever the same thing here. Now, one of the question which came up in the previous session was, and I made a point that by saying that even if you have one license in your tenant, even if you have one MDO Plan 2 license in your tenant, you would start seeing all the Plan 2 capabilities showing up. What I mean by this is, right, now let me go to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center and click on security. Right. The security is the place where you get to see all the XDR capabilities, right? Let it come up. I think it's a bit slow today. Yeah, so here we are. And if at all, I'm going to the email and collaboration piece, which is where we do all the MDO configuration, right? Now, if you see here, you would be seeing something called as investigations, explorer, review, campaigns, threat tracker, so on and so forth, right? Now, one of this capability or one of these options could be, for instance, if I'm saying attack simulation training. Now, attack simulation training is only a Plan 2 capability. If at all your tenant has a Plan 2 license, you could be using E5, which gives you Plan 2, or you could have purchased a Plan 2 as a standalone, whatever, right? But even if you have one such license in your tenant, this particular node will lighten up in your tenant. That's what I mean, right? So does that mean that, okay, now I see that, can I go ahead and apply it for everybody? Can I run an attack simulation training on everyone? The answer is no, you cannot do it. And even if at all you try to do it, you'll fall under compliance with Microsoft, and Microsoft is going to come after you. At the very high level, it won't let you to even do it. But even if you're trying to do it and it runs a job in the back end, so you will fall under compliance. So that's what I'm trying to tell. So you shouldn't make an assumption that I'm seeing this, so which means I can apply this for all the users in the tenant. That's not how it works. There are many such examples. Maybe another plan to capability which I can bring up is maybe when I'm doing the demos or when Samik is doing the demos, he can talk about that in detail. But always bear in mind that even one single license can lighten up that capability in the tenant, but you have to be cautious or else you'll fall under compliance. So that's one thing you need to be very careful about. Yep. So let me get back to my presentation here. All right. So moving on. Now, as we are going to go through a lot of demos and we are going to talk through a lot of technical jargons here, it is very, very important that we understand the core MDO terminologies, or else you'll be wondering, well, what do you mean by this, right? So, and pretty much all of these are pretty standard. This is not some weird fancy name for you to keep staring at it. So when I say anti-phishing, of course, we all understand what do we mean by phishing. So anti-phishing is a combination of human and software processes that prevent or help fix phishing attacks. So any kind of phishing attacks, and a phishing attack could be anything, right? It's a fraudulent communication that appears to come from a reputable source. What I mean by this is maybe there is an SMTP address, right? First name dot second name @vigneshganeshan.com, right? Maybe it could look like instead of VIGNESH, it could be looking like vineshganeshan.com, and you wouldn't even just pay attention to that very close unless and until looking at very closely. You wouldn't, so you would think that it is coming from a legitimate resource, and you'll end up opening it. So those are what you call as phishing attacks, because a lot of these times it looks like at a very high level looks like it is coming from a very reputable place, and it's something that you've been used to. But if you pay close attention to it, is when you would realize that, oh my god, I fell prey to this, right? So that's what you mean by phishing. Then spam. Now spam is a term for unsolicited or irrelevant messages that are sent over the internet, primarily through email, right? You would receive a lot of spam emails, marketing emails. Maybe you would have given your information somewhere, or you don't even realize how they even got all these details, but you'll be receiving all these spam emails, right, from a lot of product-based companies, or some vendors will be trying to spam you with their products or something. That's called as spam. And then malware, right? Malware, it's pretty much understood, right? From anybody who's been using computers, we all understand the viruses, and then we had anti. The same concept even applies for your email also, right? Wherein somebody would be sending you a malicious attachment, and by mistakenly you open it, it installs something inside your laptop, and the next thing you realize is your laptop or your workstation has been infected. So that's what we mean by malware, and the technique used to take care of it is your anti-malware. Now these top three are pretty generic, and I'm pretty sure anybody who has been in the industry for quite some time realizes what this is, or if at all you've been using email, right? You pretty much understand what you mean by phishing, spam, or malware. But the next thing is called as safe attachments. Now, safe attachment is nothing but it is a component of your Microsoft Defender for Office 365, and as the name itself says, it is meant to secure the attachments that you attach to an email. What do I mean by this, right? Let's say if I'm trying to attach an email, or I'm trying to attach a zip file and I'm sending it over to you, and you have safe attachment configured, right? What MDO is going to do is it's going to take away that attachment alone to a sandbox environment. It is going to run some scans. It's going to look whether there is some malicious content inside it, and then it is going to reattach that attachment once again, and then you will be seeing that mail being delivered to you with an attachment. Now there will be a slight delay in this process, and Samik will be demoing that. But pretty much in your organization, you would be seeing this. When an attachment is sent to you, you'll first receive the mail body, and then you'll be seeing a message which says that your attachment is currently being scanned, so please wait for a couple of seconds. And then the next thing you realize is the attachment shows up. So Microsoft takes your attachment, it puts it inside a sandbox. A couple of algorithms is what they run to make sure that they're checking it, they do all the tests, and then it'll be sent back to you. And all this happens within a fraction of seconds. Yeah. And then safe links. A lot of time people think that you get targeted only by downloading the content that is sent to you. That's not the case, right? Sometimes also safe links. A lot of these links would look so legitimate that only when you click it, you would realize that you fell prey to it, right? So even for safe links, when you're clicking on it, it can go ahead and perform a scan so that those are not malicious links. So that's what I mean by safe links, and we'll be showing that in the demo. The next thing is email authentication, right? What I mean by email authentication at a very high level, you can even call it as email authentication or even email validation, right? It's a set of standards that verifies the source and legitimacy of an email message. But only look at the history of SMTV services, right? So back then that was not the case, right? As long as you have the address about the to address, you can just write an email to them and it reaches them. There was no proper way of validating, or there was no checks happening during the transit, which is what led to all these new concepts such as your SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. So these are the email authentication things that you have to configure in your tenant, because these are different checks where your mail goes through to make sure that the mail is coming from a reputable source and nobody is trying to alter it, or a hacker doesn't get access to it during the transit and he tries to change something and it hits your mailbox, and something happens, right? And we'll be doing a demo on the email authentication also. Then the quarantine, a good example is, of course, we all hear this term a lot during the COVID times, right? So if at all you've been infected, what happens is they would advise you that you need to quarantine yourself in a room and keep yourself isolated. Right? The same concept even applies to your email, or that's what you mean by an email quarantine. When something malicious comes in, the system is going to quarantine it, and then there are ways wherein an end user can view it. He can check whether that is a legitimate email and only request for then the mail to make its way to the inbox, or he can simply reject it saying that, yeah, of course, this is a malicious content, I don't want this. And there are ways to configure that also. And then attack simulation. So pretty much from the CISO org, you would be seeing this sort of attack simulation being happening to your mailbox. They want to make sure that you're really paying attention, right? So one example which I quoted, something which might look so legitimate, when you click on it, you realize that you fell prey to it. So they would be running these kind of attack simulations where they're trying to, generate some kind of attacks, and they really want to see whether you as a user, whether you're reporting it using the report add-in button, or are you opening it. If you're opening it, then the next mail will come saying that you have to take a training, right? Now go and take the cybersecurity training. Couple of days back, I was attending a cybersecurity conference, and I happened to hear that in some of the organizations, it is so strict that if you end up missing 3 or 4 times such of this, or if you're constantly falling prey, there are organizations which even goes ahead and fires you, or they even tell you that your bonus is cut, or it has serious repercussions, right? So that's how serious these things are. So at least after this session, or if at all you're viewing the recording, and every time you're seeing such simulations, please act upon it, pay close attention, try to make sure that you're reporting it using the report add-in in your Outlook. Or else, I don't know, each company's policy is different, but these are basic IT principles which we've been taught right from the very beginning of our careers, right? And next is your zero or auto purge. This is mostly an after the fact control. Let's say the email has been delivered to you, right? It's already there in your inbox. Now, is it possible for MDO to go ahead and perform a scan and take that email back because it has malicious content in it? Yeah, that's what is possible using your zero or auto purge. It's mostly an after the fact kind of a control, right? And finally, you have AIR, which is nothing but the automated investigation and response capabilities. So we'll be talking about this in the plan 2 part of this session. We are not going to deep dive into AIR as of today. So as I said, these are some basic terminologies. So I'm just listing all this out because a lot of the discussion or talking that we are going to do today will be revolving around this. I want to make sure that you understand what it is when we are talking about it. Now, when we are talking about MDO, as I said, I was just showing you the cumulative architecture, which means you begin with EOP, then you work your way towards MDO plan 1 capabilities, and then plan 2. That's how a proper configuration has to be done. You can't directly go ahead and seep into, I start configuring only the plan 1 capabilities, right? And we'll also show you in a demo how that is done. So the way how EOP works is, this is nothing but your cloud email filtering service. Let's say a mail has been sent to you, right? An email comes inside, and these are the different processes which happens inside EOP. The first thing is it goes through a connection filtering. So all the incoming messages which goes through the connection filtering, that's where the sender's reputation is being checked. And most of the spam is stopped at this level itself, right? Now let's say it goes, now the next option is the message is inspected for malware. Think of all these as different gates, right? The next is anti-malware. And here is where the message gets inspected for all the, so if any malware is found in the message, guess what? It goes into the quarantine. And then it is for, based upon your quarantine policy, you can go ahead and just simply reject it, or an admin has to simply view through the quarantine and reject it, or maybe the system is suspecting that it has some malware content, so the user can check whether it is legitimate and request for that. So there are different options which Samik will be showing you. The next check is your mail flow rules, which is nothing but all your exchange transport rules. Next, it goes through this. Let's say it made its way to through these two, right? Next, it has to check whether are there any specific rules configured in your tenant. In some of the environments, right, I've seen. So every time a mail, or if at all you're trying to send an email to an external domain, mostly let's say to Gmail with an attachment, then they have some policies configured saying that, well, this has to get approved by so and so person. And there are so many such rules that you can configure, and each organization is different, right? So it goes through and checks whether any such rules are there. And if yes, then it acts based upon those rules. And finally, the content filtering. The message passes through the content filtering where harmful messages are identified as spam, phishing, or spoof. And only then is when it makes to the recipient's mailbox, or it goes to the junk email, it lands in the junk, right? And a lot of these also has to do with the customer's feedback. Maybe email is, it's a legitimate one, but because this is a system, right? It's constantly going to learn the patterns. It thinks that it's malicious and it might simply put it inside junk, or it might reject it and it can quarantine it. And then you have to go back to your email administrator and then say that I was expecting an email, it didn't show up, check whether it is there in the quarantine, right? And once or such that it's approved, then the system would understand that, okay, an email coming from this sender, it's legitimate, it's okay for me to go ahead and deliver that to the recipient's mailbox. So this is how the EOP works. And whatever I'm showing you, this is a given on any Office 365 subscription, right? Now, what can EOP standalone offer? Pretty much whatever you're seeing here, everything is an EOP standalone component. For a very long time, people thought that a lot of these are MDO Plan 1 capabilities. That's not the case. A lot of these are EOP standalone capabilities, but inside this, there might be certain core features or functionalities which you might only get if at all you have a Plan 1 or Plan 2. And we'll be talking about that, right? So what I mean by this is your anti-spam policies, your anti-phishing, your anti-malware, your quarantine, everything is configured in your EOP only. And then your investigation capabilities, it's also an EOP component, and then also the response capabilities, right? Now, what can I get with my plan one? Something which I was just speaking about, everything that I'm showing you in the previous slide, plus all these ones is what you get if at all you're going for a plan one, right? And what I'm going to get with plan two, pretty simple. We know the math by now, right? So EOP plus plan one capabilities plus this. You get the attack simulation training, the threat explorer, campaign views, and also the response capabilities. Always keep that XDR picture in your mind. Protect, prevent, investigate, automate and respond. So always keep that, and that's how all these products stack has been, built by Microsoft. All right, so next thing is how does the threat protection work as a whole, right? Now, this is a pretty big architecture diagram, so I just try to keep it as quick as possible. It's not possible for me to go through each and every single one of these. But when an email is coming into your tenant, right? I sent an email, it's from my Office 365 environment, and it could be any environment for that matter. It shouldn't be Office 365, it could be Gmail, whatever, right? But I'm sending it to your mailbox, which is hosted in Office 365, right? And as long as you're using MDO as your mail gateway, it goes through all these different layers of filtering, basically. And this is how Microsoft has configured it, right? At a very high level, when I'm saying edge protection, right? So it is at the name itself says it is at the edge, right? So this is where a lot of your, it could be your network throttling, your IP reputation. When they say network throttling, it's all about how much of emails can that Office 365 infrastructure take let's say there are always these limitations, right? You can't be just because you want to attack somebody and you have all these denial of service attacks. If somebody wants to attack your environment, they could be sending like 1 lakh emails, which should be targeting your tenant within 1 hour. That's a lot, right? And this is what attackers normally do. Or there is a lot of politics which happens behind this, which we don't want to get into, but that's what the network throttling does. And then you also have this IP reputation and throttling, right, where it looks for bad IPs and even for throttling, and it detects that and it blocks it there. Then the domain reputation to block any messages which is coming from a known bad domain, right? And you also have the directly based edge filtering, the backscatter detection. Backscatter detection is interesting. It prevents an organization from being attacked through invalid non-delivery reports. Yeah. And as I said, I don't want to go to each and every single one of these. The next thing is your sender intelligence. So here is where it's going to check for some critical things such as your spam, bulk mails, impersonation, unauthorized spoof messages, and also things such as your phishing, right? So it's going to check for your account compromise and detection, wherein if there is an anomaly and if somebody is trying, maybe somebody got hold of a user's account and then they're trying to do something wrong, right? And then the email authentication piece is configured here. So DMARC, DKM. So these are all the different layers wherein you can go ahead and configure all these things, right? So in this layer is where you would go ahead and configure all this. And the cross domain, the bulk filtering, mailbox intelligence, user impersonation. So all these things can be configured here. Next is the content filtering. So this is where you have the transport rules place, where you would be configuring specific rules for your tenant. And then the antivirus is also there, the AB engine, which runs on Microsoft data centers, which is going to do the job of scanning this. Of course, in the case of Microsoft, we know that it's going to be the Microsoft Defender antivirus. And then the, oh God, hang on. Did I just do? And then the attachment reputation blocking, the attachment filtering. So pretty much when we are configuring and doing the demos that we are configuring these policies, all this would make sense to you, and each and every single layer how you can go ahead and configure this, and also post delivery protection. So until this, it is something which is up before hitting your inbox, and even let's say the mailbox made its way to your inbox, right? Even after the fact, you can go ahead and perform certain scans, or you can go ahead and perform a certain things, and you can go ahead and get rid of this. That's where the zero or auto purge, the ZAP comes into picture, wherein we just spoke about, let's say a mail made its way into your box and it has something malicious. Even then it's possible to go ahead and get that mail outside. And there is a detailed documentation about this on Microsoft's docs. Just go ahead and read that. I don't want to spend my time walking through all this. It's pretty intuitive. Go ahead and read through it, and it'll make a lot more. But just so you know that this is how the protection stack works like. And a quick note here: whatever you're seeing here is subjected to change as the product grows and develops, right? So tomorrow, if Microsoft is trying to bring in some more controls, then you would see some more capabilities here. And now coming to the MDO deployment steps. So this is, if at all you're somebody who's completely new, you have no idea about what to do with MDO, you've been hired and your, let's say your boss or your CISO was asking you that we need to start configuring our MDO capabilities. Now you're clueless, right? You wonder where do I even begin with, right? But this is a very good deployment guide wherein you can start following, and this is a proper stepwise approach. And this is the same approach that we're also going to take in our demo also. We'll be going this exact route so that it makes sense to you. And at a very high level, you'll be doing the email authentication wherein the SPF, DKM, and DMARC is configured. Then we'll be configuring the EOP policies, and then the MDO plan 1 and plan 2 policies. And an email authentication, I'm pretty sure everybody would be knowing this. So it's the process used to verify the source and legitimacy of an email message. And these are different records. These are basically DNS records that needs to be configured, right? Your SPF, it's nothing but it helps to validate outbound email sent from your custom domain, right? Then you have the DKIM, it's nothing but every email gets a digital signature in the message header. So it's going to mainly help to prevent attackers from sending messages that look like they come from your domain, and to verify that a message hasn't been altered in transit. Then you also have the DMARC, ensures the destination email system trusts messages sent from your domain. This is once again a multi-layered approach. What I mean by this is you have to first configure SPF, then the DKIM, and then the DMARC. That could be a scenario that a mail made its way through SPF, right? But DKIM would catch it. Or if it is a malicious content, so SPF just allowed it, but DKIM can catch it. Or it could be a scenario that SPF and DKIM allowed it, but DMARC caught hold of it. And there is a good documentation about this, wherein we can go and read in detail about that also. But as long as you mean dealing with email, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC are very, very basic for you to know. Okay. Now, before we get into the demo, I just want to make sure that you understand the permissions that is needed for you to use Defender for Office 365. Of course, the very highest level of privilege is global administrator, but we all realize that that's not something that you get very often. So you could also be having the organization management role in email and collaboration. This is a specific role that you can go and see in your Exchange online side of the house. And then you could be a security administrator in Azure AD, and also Exchange Online Organization Management. So a quick thing to note here is you should be having either one of these roles is enough. You don't need all of them, right? So just don't go and say that I need all of these. Either one of these is enough for you to go and play around with MDO and start configuring things. All right. Now in the demo, I'll just quickly show you a couple of things and then I'll hand it over to Samik so that he can do his part. So here we are on the Microsoft Defender XDR page. Come up. So I'm going to quickly go to the email and collaboration. So this is all your MDO. For anything you want to configure in MDO, this is where you would be doing it. I'm going to click on policies and rules, threat policies. Now, there's a different categories here. You see threat policies, templated policies, rules, and others, right? The way you need to look at this is when I say templated policies, this is something for anybody who's new to this. You absolutely have no idea about what you want to do, how you want to configure, right? So these are all templated policies which helps you to get started with. Now you have an option here called as preset security policies, meaning these are some controls which Microsoft, as per best practices, they have already configured it. It's just a matter for you to go ahead and turn it on for your tenant, right? Now, for instance, if at all there is something called as built-in protection, standard protection, and strict protection. Now, maybe in my tenant, I want to get started with standard protection. I want to turn it on and see how the mail flow happens after it. Are people complaining? Are the mail flows happening smoothly, or is there something which MDO is blocking? For those sort of things, you can get started with this. It's a strict protection. The name itself says it's going to have very tight level of controls. When you do this, is where you're going to hold a lot of people making noise saying that everything used to work perfectly fine and now things are getting blocked. And then is where you can go ahead and start tweaking things. But as a beginner, this is where you would start. I'll click on manage protection settings. It's pretty straightforward. Let it come up. It says apply Exchange Online protection first. It says simply, okay, add the users, groups, and domains who you want to be protected using EOP. And if at all you want to do like a pilot kind of an approach, this would be the right place to begin with. Let it come. Let me cancel and start this thing again. Okay, so it's going to ask apply protection to all recipients, specific recipients, or none. For the sake of the demo, I'm just going to say all recipients, but in a real production scenario, don't do that, right? So make sure that you're doing this only with a pilot set of users, and then you slowly work your way towards everybody in your organization. Apply Defender for Office 365 protection. Once again, I'm going to say all recipients. And you also have an option here to exclude these recipients. Maybe if you want to exclude yourself or you want to exclude a particular set of people so that they are not part of this, you could also go ahead and do that as well. Right? And impersonation protection. In the next steps, you can specify all these things. Add email addresses to flag when impersonated by attackers, right? Who might be impersonated by attackers such as top level executives, board members, and other people in key roles, because they are the ones who the attackers mostly go after. So you can go ahead and add their details here, right? So in my case, if I want to add Samik here, I can go ahead and do that. Simply click on Samik. Please enter Samik and okay, I'm doing it the wrong way. I should be adding a name here and this here the email here. I'll just add it and you can just go ahead and add it, right? And add next. custom domains, add domains to flag when impersonated by attack. So if at all you're having custom domains, you can go ahead and put in those domains also. And then add trusted email addresses and domains to not flag as impersonation, right? Because you need to realize that it is a system which is constantly going to learn from the behaviors and patterns. At the very beginning, it's going to, when it sees something different, it's simply going to flag it and say that I think this is something malicious, it is a malware or something, right? So, and if at all you want to do, if you do not want to fall into those kind of scenarios, you can just go ahead and say that, well, this is an email address which we trust, we have a legitimate business to do with them, so anytime something is coming from here, please don't go ahead and block it. So even those kind of things can also be done here. And then the policy mode, or turn on the policy when finished or leave it turned off. So it's pretty straightforward. It's not that hard at all. It's just that you need to make sure that you're putting in the right options, you're putting in the right people inside it and configuring it. So this is what a standard protection means. A strict protection is exactly, once again, the same thing, the same process, wherein only difference between these two is this is going to apply standard controls, this is going to apply strict controls. So you need to be mindful of that. The next thing which we want to show you is the configuration analyzer, right? Now, you may configure things, but how do you even know that you have configured things based on the best practices and standards, right? Or maybe you configured it and later it is contradicting with something that is not the correct configuration to have, right? So those all can be captured in your configuration analyzer. As the name itself says, it's going to analyze the configuration that you have put up and it's going to give you suggestions. For instance, one of the things which Samik was configuring earlier today, right? So we were playing around with this, and it says that, for instance, right, your anti-spam under your strict recommendations. So it says that, hey, one of the policies that you have configured, for instance, if you want to open this, it says you have configured this policy, and we recommend configuring the spam detection action to quarantine message. So and it's gonna also show you that it says that you have chosen a different option, but as per our recommendations, we want you to choose a different radio button because that is the industry standard or that is the best practice, right? So and then it's going to take you to that policy where you have made that tuning or that option, and then you can go ahead and turn it on accordingly. I hope you get the picture about the configuration analyzer. Okay. This is what exactly is talking. In a similar way, it's going to scan through every single thing, and these are all recommendations for you, right? And then you also have something called as configuration drift analysis and history, wherein here all the configuration changes that you've been doing to the policies, everything gets captured here. If at all you, all the drifting, as the name itself is drift analysis and history, you can always come back here and you can keep looking at things. If at all you want to have a one-stop shop about all the changes that you've been doing, all the configuration changes, everything gets captured here. So as I said, this particular component is for somebody who's getting started with the product, who doesn't have any idea, and you want to, the first time you're doing it for your tenant, you would use this. But maybe you're a mature organization, you understand, you want to have more custom controls, you want to have more custom policies, you're a large enterprise, you can't afford to just go with the preset security policies, you are certain things that you want to have. So that is where all these other policies comes into picture. The remaining, or at least these two options, are interconnected. So for that, let me hand it over to Samik. So Samik is going to walk you through how you can configure all these custom policies. So Samik, over to you.
Thank you, Vignesh. And gonna share my key screen, and if you could confirm that I'm clear in my audio and then you're able to see my screen as well.
You're good to go.
All right, thank you. Coming back to what Vignesh just mentioned, that if you're starting very new, we have templated policies, and then if we really have the maturity done, that we are done with the basics and then understood what's exactly the organization needs are, then we start getting into policies individually and then configure them one by one. So that's why I'll start with anti-phishing. And as you know, anti-phishing is just a policy to understand and avoid basic phishing attacks. And in here, what we have already done, we have created a policy just so that it can work in action. But let me try to take that once again, and I'm gonna create that. Just close it up, create that once again, just say new policy and then give it the same description. And if you look at this settings, if I go to next, it can it has a granularity of letting us set this at a user level, at a group level, or at a domain level. So by default, whatever you created, that's done to the entire domain, just so that we cover the most of the people. But if you really want to do it, for example, if we are doing anti-phishing policy, and we know our sales teams are really, really vulnerable to phishing attacks, so we can definitely do to one of the sales groups, which is sales teams, and then go to next. Just to keep in mind, you have to at least select any of them, so at least a user or a group or a domain, to make sure that you are able to configure the policy the right way. Then we go to next, and as you see here, by default, even one single phishing comes in, that's an alert. That's what Microsoft recommends. It also has a recommendation enable automatic system control impersonation protection, which Vignesh just showed you in a while I talked about. And within that, we also have another set of cross configuration, I would say, wherein you can say manage senders whom you should want to keep it entrusted. And same thing goes for domains. And if you really want to have senders and domains trusted, for example, you know that your sales team is going to go to ABC domain just for opportunities, right? You can definitely make sure that their mails doesn't create any phishing alert and things like that. Same thing goes for spoofing as well. And there as well, you can enable or block certain tenant from spoofing, so that those tenants are basically only observed or excluded, right? Just for the sake of simplicity, I'll go to next, and we look at the action, the default one, as you can see. And also you can say what exactly should be happening. So either you quarantine the message, which is, again, because it's default, it's also mean that it's a best practice, because everything comes up. If it is quarantined, then it's a really good idea to go. If not, you can also say that, okay, just move it to a recipient junk folder and leave it as it is, don't do anything. If that has a demarc policy pre-set up as reject, you can reject the message, right? Same thing for if a message is detected as spoof, what to do with that, right? Quarantine or move it, like that's how it should be. Then there are some safety tips. Even whatever you configure, if you still want the users to get intimated, safety tips and indicators, wherein it will show wherein it will show that uh, exactly a via tag or unauthenticated sender. If it is a spoof mail, that's more of a user information stuff here, which can be configured, and it's by default checked in, right? Next, we're going to go to next, and this is the last place where you can still review our policy, what we have configured, and submit. Again, just with the interest of time, I'm going to cancel back. And as I mentioned you, we can already have a webinar demo policy created, right? So that's what anti-phishing policy can be configured. Now, if we try to look at the next set of policies, which is anti-spam, it is similar but not same. That's where I will just go to the set of anti-spam policies. And if you observe, when Bignesh was talking about preset policy, when it comes in, right, you can see, because that was not connected, just demonstrated, it is still turned off. So when we try to create an anti-spam policy, right, there are two things. We can either do an inbound policy or outbound. The reason is, for example, you have someone, right, who is trying to pass a lot of information away, or who is trying to send a mass mail or things like that. That's outbound thing, right? And same thing, if it is an inbound, you can configure rules accordingly. So what I'm going to do right now is, let's copy this and try to create an inbound policy, for example. And I'll just say that, inbound policy new. And why I'm typing new, that's because if I try to use the same name, it's going to throw an error, because that name policy is already there. And that means once we create a policy with a particular name, we need to know that that cannot be altered. So that's fixed like an ID. You can change the description, you can change the properties, but you cannot change the name of policy, right? Coming to the next one, same settings here, right? We can stick it to a user, a group, and again, I'm gonna go to, let's say this time we're gonna pick up sales and marketing. And if I go next, obviously the spam score is by default 7. I mean, it depends on totally your and your organization configuration, and I've seen environments where you can keep as low as 3 as a spam one, so that it can basically flag it earlier, right, if someone is spending really good amount of mails. Then there are certain things, the way we do the rest of the settings, wherein Microsoft identifies and gives it more score towards the mail being in spam. if you want to turn it on, like if it has remote website links, if you have a new numeric IP address in the URL, for example, if someone is sending an email with that has IP address instead of a domain name, if it has a URL port, for example, anything other than 443, like say any other random ports, any links from the website which is a business or info, because they are like the mass mailers, right, mostly, then you can also go deeper and specify that what should be marked as a spam. And if that include the properties, if someone is randomly sending empty messages, right, or if someone has embedded HTML tags, or if someone has JavaScript or HTML, and so on and so forth, right? You can see there is really a lot of granular settings which you can specify, and you can definitely configure, turn it on and off, right? Then if we go to next, obviously when an anti-spam mail comes in, either it's inbound or outbound, we can define what exactly to do. So either it can be moved into junk folder, you can add a header, you can delete, you can quarantine a message, right? So let me see, if I the moment you select a quarantine a message, right, well, let's say if it is an incoming mail, and one of the use cases of setting up quarantine, as I'll just try to call out the corona environment, right, what exactly quarantine means. So if it is infected, or if you are suspected to be infected, then you are going to go through an isolation, and you are going to get cleaned up just to make sure that, and sanitized in a right way, so that if you qualify the sanitization process, you are good to go. And when you do that quarantine message, if you see there is a drop down just below that, you can select a quarantine policy. And in here, as I said, right, any other default policies, we also have a custom policy created, which I will go there in a moment, right? And let me just try to show you and select. That means it can be done with a custom policy. So I'm going to go to, just to show you, it's a custom policy. And then if it is, you can definitely show what high confidence spam look like, and how what should be done with it, and anything on phishing and things like that. And obviously how long you want to retain if you're keeping it quarantine, because for example, there are people who are traveling, they don't open the mail every day, they can definitely keep it for 15 days or even 7 days and things like that. And then there are some safety tips around enable spam safety tips, that's going to give you tips, and enable phishing messages, spam messages and things like that. And then when we do that, once we go to the next step, again, you also have a granular settings, what is allowed, what is blocked. For example, coming back to the same example for sales and marketing. So if you have prospects, you can definitely, allow the sender that doesn't matter if they're sending from .biz for an IP address or any local details, right? That should not be considered as a spam, right? Or even they are like sending multiple emails, maybe that's also no spam. And just the other way as well, you can block them, right? And once we are done with all the settings, we just, as the other policy, we're going to see all the details, whatever is configured, and this is our last chance kind of, that we can review and change if we need to, and we can create that. But again, I'm going to cancel, and then because we already have, and I'm going to cancel, say yes. As you can see, there are two policies I've already created: demo inbound and outbound policies, right? Now we have seen anti-phishing and anti-spam. Let's look at the anti-malware policy as well. And coming back to the same logic here, this is another policy wherein we can see, as you see, like the strict policy is turned off. We have already anti-malware policy created, and let me try to show you this time, instead of creating a new one, that how an existing policy looks like. So just be with me for a moment, and obviously you can turn it off and do other settings. And as I was talking about, right, once a policy is created, that name is kind of set in stone until you delete it. Like if you really need to change the name, you're going to delete and recreate the policy, because you can edit description, you can edit, for example, edit users and domains, and any other settings. For example, if you want to apply this anti-malware policy for custom file types, which is by default built in, and there are certain file types Microsoft has already defined, and if you want to modify them, you can. And what happens when these are found, it gets into quarantine, and then you can see who are going to get notification. And I have configured my email here that anything of that sort comes in, we are going to get a notification. And also when you set a quarantine policy, you can see it is going to a particular custom policy, which I'm also going to show that in a moment, right? So with that, I'm going to close this malware policy, and we are going to jump now. Whatever we have talked about, these are like more of policies, and this is though safe attachment and safe links are policies, this is more of protecting users from something has already come through. Then it is more of configuring in a way that users are not hampered or user not impacted through attachment and links. So if I click on safe attachment policies, and you know uh, as I was telling that there is one policy already configured, and let me try to close and create a new one, which I'm going to show there in a minute. And let me close this, create this, and as just to show you, right? Because what happens is, the moment if I want to give the same name, uh, it's not going to let me create that. That's because the name is already present. So I'm going to just add on a new one so that it let me pass through that screen validation. I'm going to go to next. The same logic here. I'm going to add in sales. So let's go for sales teams. In the next, this is the crux of the entire policy here. What exactly to be done if an attachment is being sent? And the most sophisticated one, though, it's gonna be dynamic delivery. So what happens is, there are cases if you turn it on, nothing is going to happen. If we monitor it, the email with attachment will be delivered, but it'll be scanning and tracking the result. If anything of that sort detected, if you say block, it's going to get blocked, right? If you say dynamic delivery, which I'm going to show you right now how the demo looks like, right? It will send us a mail, and then it will not let us open the attachment till the time Defender completes the scan, right? And obviously, in the scan, what were found out, you can always see what type of quarantine policy you're going to select, and according to that, it's going to show up the rest of the configuration. If you want to enable redirect, things like that, you can do that. Once you are done with the settings, you're going to see again the full policy and ready for submission, and that's it. So with that said, I think I have just opened my mailbox as well, and I would request Vignesh to send out an email to me so that we can kind of show you how it looks like. So Vignesh, if you could send out an email to me right away. And what Vignesh is going to do is he's going to send an email to my mail ID with a specific attachment, and once we receive it, you will observe that it will definitely show that that mail has an attachment, but it will never let us open that attachment until, as I say, Defender completes that scanning. For example, this is the one, right? You see, if I just click on that, I have immediately open what it says, making sure that your attachment is safe. That means it doesn't want the users to kind of click on a wrong link, and just that it is done. You see it came in, the mail got automatically updated, and I have the attachment right now. Right now you can download it and obviously open it and things like that. Right now, coming to the next one, as a policy, we're going to show safe links. So safe link is something, uh, so I think we have a question. It's meant for all. So if I understand you correct, it totally depends on how we configure the policy and what scope you put in. And I'm going to reiterate that once again. So as you see, there is one safe link policy created. So we're going to create still another one so that we can show you. And once we create, and as I said, I'm going to say new and paste it here, say next. Now, depending on whom you want it to be applied for, you just obviously there are two things, right? One thing, we need to make sure that, as Vignesh has mentioned earlier, the user should have license. Then you're going to configure them like you want this policy to be applied for a set of users, for a group of user, or for the entire domain, right? So let's say if I want to do it for the entire domain, right? This is what we would do. And you can also, if you're doing domain, you can also exclude specific groups if you want to, case to case basis. And then you go next. And then if you look at the settings, right, it totally depends on, there are certain settings available, what to be done on email, what to be done on Teams, and what to be done on Office 365 apps. So basically it covers all your Office Online products. So, and if you look at here, apply safe links to emails sent within organization. That's going to happen. Apply real-time URL scanning for suspicious links. Obviously, that's going to happen because it's going to scan if someone sends it for external. Wait the URL scan to complete before delivering. That means you will have a slightest delay, but when you receive an email, that's going to show you that, okay, this is safe. This is a safe link to be clicked, right? And obviously, apart from any app, you see the link or click the link. This is going to track as well who has clicked on, what kind of link, and if you have a notification to be done, right? And then if you go to the next, by default, you can use a default notification text by Microsoft. You can go on custom. Next, we're going to go to review, and you know uh, as usual, like the any other policy, you get to see that settings, you get a chance to edit and then submit it to create it. Now I'm going to cancel and go back to my mailbox again, and I request you to request Bignesh to send me another email with a link within it, right? And I'm going to show you what's the behavior when the mail comes in, and then when you click on the link, what exactly happens. So Bignesh, if you could send
Uh,
out an email with the attachment, sorry, with the link.
it's coming. Yeah.
All right. So I got that. Here is a link to text. So if you look at this, I'm going to click on this. And if you observe, this gonna get me a safe link HTML. That means this is basically, though it was a very, very simple learn Microsoft URL, right? I'm gonna do it once again. So if I click on this, if you see, this is going to highlight safe link, and then, so it is basically bypassing that link or passing that particular link through a safe link page designed by Microsoft to make sure that even if user clicks on it, he's kind of redirect through a safe process. And how that's determined, what to do, if I click on the existing policy, that's going to show. If you see, right, do not rewrite the URL. That means it's not going to rewrite it, but it's going to wait for the scanning to be completed, and it's also going to apply real-time scanning of suspicious links, and apply safe links for the emails sent within the organization. So what Bignesh just did right now, right? And with that said, that's basically what policies are talking about. We have talking about, and there is something called rules, right? And as we talked about quarantining policies a lot during your anti-spam, anti-malware, and any other policies, right? We're gonna see what exactly to be happening. So, for example, if any anti-spam policy has picked up, or any anti-malware policy has picked up that a message is really a malware, and that has pointed it to be a quarantine policy which we have developed. So if we look at this as usual, right, I'm going to open the existing one, and you can see what exactly it does, what happens when someone applies this policy, or once this policy is triggered. It only lets you enable the preview message, and what I'm going to do is, let me try to create another policy, and policy name as usual, I'm going to give a new name and go to next. And you can definitely configure, once a mail is being sent to quarantine, what to be done. We can do limit access, and that is pretty much defined. We can go to specific access, and then within specific action, we can see, block sender, preview, delete, and can a user allow that quarantine mail to be released, or it has to be only done through admin. You can make it a settings, which is again on top and default, that it has to be based on an allowed request, and you can also set it to be done by an admin, right? So that depends on kind of the policy and the rules we have. And just to add further, we can talk about tenant allow and block, which you have seen, which is available in multiple policies as well. So it's a cross feature. And another thing I just wanted to add, as you see, there are two sections. One is policies, one is rules. So one thing you have to understand, that a rule is something once we apply, it works right away, and that's applied maybe on the journey. So if you block a tenant, right, or allow a tenant, when the mail is in transit, then it's actually get applied. That's the rule, right? And the policy is something like, all right, you have configured an anti-spam policy, and then your mail is received, or mail is already delivered into Exchange Online, then it is processed by Microsoft Defender for Office, that really to find out it's anti-malware or not. And generally, policy takes a while to get effect after you configure it, and rules just works right away, right? So that's the fundamental difference between a policy and rule. Now, after we have configured both of them, if we really want to want to look at what's going on, right? I'll use the same left navigation, and we can go to Explorer right here. And in Explorer, it will definitely give us a very, very high level overview, of how things are there. As you can see, we have been working here for like a few days, and you can see all the email, and some of the things are kind of blocked, some of the things are delivered, and the reason is it can tell us, right? Sapling test, what is the mail, and what exactly happening, what is the sender domain, and things like that, what exactly happened, and the total behavior of it. And if you really want to go more deeper, we can definitely go to each section to look at each of them, what exactly they contain, right? And after that, this another thing also, we just wanted to confirm, if we by default go to policies, we can also see there are two more policies. One is alert policies, one is activity policies. So these are nothing but it makes you available certain things, like if you really want to create an activity policy, it's mostly office activity, and you can create a policy on that. So I'll just try to let it load, or maybe I can click on a new policy, and then it's you can set it as a custom, and then you can choose what are the activities. For example, I have just created a policy for accessing file, and any file getting access, this going to create and send an alert to me, right? And this is exactly unusual activity rule. So what I have done here is, if I'm going to open, it's this is what it's going to show. So it might take a while to load up the screen, but in the meantime, I'll just quickly go back to another one for alert policies. And it's something similar, where you can also create an alert policy to get an alert from office activities and things like that. So with that said, I'll just give it back to Vignesh.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the reports and other things?
Sure. Thank you for that. So obviously, when you talk about all the policies getting created, and then we did some activities, right? And then that obviously there is a reporting component to it. So if I look at the report, and if you look at the email and collaboration report, let's look at the email collaboration report, and I think this is the one. This basically gets you a full summary of that. For example, mail status is by default built in one, right? Threat protection status is combined from a in a policy. For example, email malware, email spam, email phish, and content malware. Same thing for URL protection report. It's just there's a spike, you can see, because we have been doing stuff, and then you can see it is because it's allowed. So Bignesh has just sent a mail, and that was allowed, and that's why you see the spike. So it's a summary over there. You can also see, right, allowed to. Same thing, there is something called mail latency due to policies applied at times. And if there is any malware, you're going to see here. If there are any spoof detection, compromised users, things like that, right? So that's something you can also look at, and you should look at periodically this report piece to understand how your policies are performing. And this can also be an input for your policy fine tuning too, eventually, right? So with that, is there anything, Vignesh, you want to add here?
No, I think I'm good. It's we can move on to the next one. Let me take over. All right, folks. So that's pretty much what we wanted to show for the plan one session. But of course, you do realize that a lot of these is something for you to go back, read, play around in your tenant, configure these things and play around and try to make some phishing attempts, try to make some malware, mails which has malware and see how things work. Try to create policies, try to fine tune it. A lot of this is for you to go back, do your stuff, and then learn from that. Yeah. So finally, these are some useful links. I'll also be putting it in the chat. These are some links which we want you to refer if at all you're getting started with this, or if at all you're following, if you're following along with us and you want to start configuring things in your demo environment. So finally, to close out, if at all you're wondering about the industry recognition for Defender for Office 365, of course, it's been very well rated in Gartner, but just not that, even from Forrester and also from AC Labs, it's been rated as a high standard product. So just so you know, if at all you're trying to do a POC on this, or if at all you're interested to look at this, so be mindful of the fact that Microsoft Security is a recognized leader, and specifically from Forrester and SC Labs, this product has been rated very well. And with that, thanks a lot, folks. You've been wonderful audiences. And if at all you have any questions, now is the time for that. And our next session would be on getting started with Microsoft Defender for Office 365 Part 2, wherein we want to drift more on the Part 2 side of houses. On the Plan 2 side of things. We'll talk more on the investigate and also the automation piece and the other things which we have missed in today's session. That's what we are basically going to do. Yeah. And with that, if at all you have any further questions, please feel free to bring them up. And also here is a QR code for you to scan and give us your feedback. And if at all you have any questions later, as you're playing along and you're doing the demos by yourself, right? So you can ask those questions also. With that, I'm going to stop here and look if there are any questions and start answering them. Thank you.